Rachel Zegler's chaotic and overly woke behavior has single-handedly caused a major crisis for one of Hollywood's top companies. Her actions are unraveling months of hard work by Disney's executives to fix Snow White's image. Right now, the House of Mouse is in serious trouble, and at the heart of the mess? You guessed it, Snow White 2025 and its lead, Rachel Zegler. The actress seems to have a knack for causing destruction, especially when it involves billion-dollar companies. Surprisingly, Zegler's controversial actions have caused her to be sidelined in Hollywood. Since publicly humiliating the Snow White remake's producers, she's been a pariah. In fact, she hasn't booked a significant role in the past 2 years. Filmmakers are now steering clear of her, aware that casting her could spell disaster for their projects. As a result, her career has come to a halt. Meanwhile, Disney is also undergoing a major cost-cutting spree, with CEO Bob Iger scrambling to save the floundering Snow White remake. What was once meant to be a box office hit is now heading toward a PR disaster as public backlash against the film escalates into a full-scale nightmare.
Actions have consequences, especially when it comes to stone cold stupid.
Go home to your mother!
Speaking of stupid mistakes, Disney released the latest trailer for Snow White. I gotta say, take a look at the 7 dwarfs. They look like rejected plastic gardens.
The drama really kicked off when the trailer for Snow White 2025 dropped at D23. The reaction? Well, let's just say it wasn't a standing ovation. Fans were furious. We're not talking about a handful of upset tweets. This has spiraled into full-on calls for a boycott. That's right, a Disney movie that had no major haters for nearly a century is now being actively boycotted. Why? People are fed up. For years, Disney has been reimagining its beloved classics, and many fans feel like the magic is being swapped out for heavy-handed messaging. Audiences were hoping for nostalgia and fantasy, but instead, they're getting what feels like a lecture. And this time, fans are making it clear they've had enough. Now, let's talk about the biggest issue at hand, Snow White herself. In this version, our classic pale-skinned princess is played by Rachel Zegler, a Latina actress. Meanwhile, the 7 dwarfs? Well, they're not dwarfs anymore, and none of them are white. Here's where things get tricky. Representation in media is important, sure, but many fans feel Disney is so focused on pushing a message that they've lost sight of the core of the story. People wanted a Snow White that felt familiar and reminded them of their childhoods. Instead, they're getting something that feels like a complete departure, and for some, that's a deal breaker.
Disney, who decided to update Snow White for modern-day audiences by rewriting her origin story. Now, she was a baby that survived a snowstorm, so the king and queen named her Snow White.
This brings us to the bigger issue, Disney's focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. Let's be clear, diversity can absolutely strengthen storytelling, but when it feels forced, it can come across as disingenuous. Fans aren't going to the theaters to be lectured on woke issues. They're seeking an escape into a magical world. Instead, what they're getting feels more like a woke narrative from 2024 than a timeless fairy tale from 1882. That shift, from focusing on the story to pushing a message, has left many frustrated. And speaking of frustration, let's not forget about Rachel Zegler, the actress at the heart of the storm. Zegler is no stranger to controversy, but her comments about the original Snow White have painted her as a bully. Instead of celebrating Disney's 100 years of magic or expressing pride in her role, she's been vocal about her disdain for the original story, calling it outdated and irrelevant. She's essentially throwing shade at the foundation of the very remake she's starring in. Fans aren't impressed. They're saying, if you're going to play Snow White, at least respect the original character. Instead of an homage, we're getting the complete opposite, leaving many questioning why Disney even cast her in the role. The backlash has gotten so intense that Zegler is reportedly being cut from future Disney projects. Yep, she's still tied to Snow White 2025, but her Disney career may already be over. Can you blame the studio? The biggest question on everyone's mind is why take a beloved classic like Snow White and twist it into something almost unrecognizable? If Disney wants to tell new, modern stories, that's fine. Why not create new characters and worlds? Instead, they're taking stories people grew up loving and turning them into something completely different, which feels disrespectful to many fans. Rachel Zegler isn't exactly handling the storm with grace. She's pointing fingers at Disney's marketing team, claiming that their promotional strategy is to blame for the backlash. According to Zegler, every trailer, every poster, every little detail seemed to stir up more outrage rather than building excitement. It only fueled the public's anger. And speaking of marketing disasters, Disney is now desperately trying to fix what seems like an unfixable mess. They've decided to fire the entire marketing team for the movie, hoping a fresh squad can somehow salvage its image. Can you imagine the pressure on these people? Trying to spin this disaster into something remotely appealing is like trying to rebuild a house in the middle of a hurricane. It's not just damage control, it's desperation. Disney's executives are panicking because this boycott isn't just an online blip. It's a full-blown PR catastrophe. And things are getting even crazier. Disney is now pushing for reshoots, just 2 months before the movie's release. They're hauling everyone back in for October 2024 reshoots. It's a Hail Mary play, hoping these last-minute changes will somehow win back fans. Zegler and the rest of the cast are reportedly on standby, practically begging them to jump back in and fix the mess. But let's be honest, how much can you really change this late in the game? The never-ending effect doesn't stop there. Disney had big plans for Snow White 2025 merchandise, action figures, dolls, themed apparel, you name it. But now, with fans rejecting the movie, Disney has hit the brakes on all that merch. Instead of flying off the shelves, those toys and outfits are probably going to end up collecting dust in a warehouse. For a company that relies on merchandising to rake in billions, that's a massive problem. And if you think that's bad, hold on. The financial stakes are even higher. Disney has already poured a staggering $300 million into this movie, and with reshoots on the table, they're about to drop another $10 to $15 million on top of that. It's a gamble, plain and simple. They're throwing even more money into a project that's already a PR and financial nightmare, hoping for a miracle. But let's be real, how often do these 11th-hour fixes actually work?
That puts the budget for live-action Snow White all in at $405 million.
But the real question is, will Disney learn from this? Or are we doomed to see more classics turned into cautionary tales of what not to do? Time will tell, but one thing's for sure. The House of Mouse will lose all its magic if it doesn't return to what made it great. No woke agendas, just sheer entertainment. So, what do you think? Is this the end of Disney's live-action era as we know it? Or can they somehow bounce back from this colossal blunder? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more exciting videos on Snow White and other woke projects in Hollywood. See you in the next one.